this. Imagine taking a top-of-the-line smartphone, right?
Sure, like a device easily worth over $1,000.
Exactly. And it's packed with incredible processing power, a miraculous camera array, global satellite connectivity. I mean, the absolute works.
A literal pocket supercomputer.
Right. Now imagine taking that incredible piece of technology,
Yeah.
turning on airplane mode, and just permanently leaving it there.
Just leaving it, why would anyone do that?
Well, you do this because you are terrified of the battery draining. You want to keep the device perfectly safe.
Oh, I see. So the battery stays at 100%.
Yeah, nothing goes wrong. No unwanted calls interrupt your day. But by doing so, you've completely disconnected the device from its actual power and purpose.
It becomes essentially just a very expensive glass and metal paperweight.
Precisely. And have you ever felt like you're doing exactly that with your own potential, working incredibly hard, yet constantly hitting this invisible ceiling in your career or your creative projects?
That is a highly frustrating feeling for sure.
It really is. And if that specific friction sounds familiar to you, you are the exact person we're talking to today. Welcome to today's Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to locate that invisible leak in your energy. We are pulling apart a truly fascinating text called Mastering the Art of Making Things Happen.
It's this underground hybrid text, really. It blends performance psychology with entrepreneurial philosophy.
Yeah. And we are zeroing in on what the author frames as page 2 of their core conceptual model.
Right, and for some quick context, page 1 of that model deals with the tuning forks.
The tuning fork.
Yeah, it explores the raw energy of your intentions, how you resonate with the goals you set.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, intention alone doesn't explain why incredibly capable people stay stuck for years. So, moving into page 2, the source abandons abstract psychology and introduces a deeply confronting physical metaphor for the mind.
We move from the tuning fork to the governor valve.
Exactly. The argument here is that limiting beliefs are not just fleeting thoughts. They act as literal mechanical throttles on your reality.
Which fundamentally shifts how we have to approach the problem, If we view a lack of progress merely as a lack of confidence, we look for emotional solutions.
You do, yeah. You try to feel better about it.
But the text frames limiting beliefs as active machinery installed in the mind to keep your reality artificially small and manageable.
Think of a literal governor valve on a high-pressure pipe or a commercial engine.
Right. Its entire engineering purpose is to choke the flow of fuel or pressure, isn't it?
Exactly. It's there to prevent the system from exploding under too much stress. It restricts the flow intentionally.
So it's a feature, not a bug, mechanically speaking.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a self-help cliche at this point, but the text leans into the analogy of a Ferrari to make the mechanical nature of this very clear.
Cliches usually exist for a reason.
True. So you possess this magnificent high-performance engine capable of dominating the track. Yet, hidden deep within the fuel lines, a governor valve has been firmly calibrated to a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour.
Wow. So pressing the accelerator to the floor does absolutely nothing then?
Nothing. Pumping the tank full of premium, high-octane fuel does nothing. The engine's raw, explosive power is rendered totally inert because an internal restriction is actively starving it.
You're burning all this energy gripped to the steering wheel and wondering why everyone else on the highway is just casually cruising past you.
It's exhausting. And the text goes even deeper into this dynamic by introducing the concept of the self-imposed tax.
Oh, the mining analogy. I love this part.
Right. It suggests that you are essentially telling the universe, I want the gold, but I only give myself a permit to mine copper.
You're taxing your own ambition before you even take your first swing at the rock.
Exactly. You cap your upside because managing a copper mine feels safer than managing a gold mine.
What's fascinating here is how the source defines this as a universal energy leak.
Yeah, and the critical word to focus on there is active.
Right. A leak in this context isn't just a wound that happened once in your past. It's an ongoing, continuous loss of pressure happening right now.
When you hold a limiting belief, you are actively throttling your own flow in real time.
It has to be a highly demanding, energy-intensive process to keep a high-performance engine running at 20 miles per hour.
It is. You're actively enforcing that restriction on yourself every single day, often without even realizing the immense amount of energy it takes to hold yourself back.
I have to push back on this mechanical metaphor for a moment, though.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Well, if we accept the premise that we all possess this Ferrari engine of potential, Why on earth would our own minds install a governor valve in the first place?
That's a very fair question.
I mean, it seems counter-revolutionary. Why build a highly advanced psychological system that actively sabotages its own success?
The engine metaphor actually holds the answer to that paradox perfectly. Why do mechanical engineers put governor valves on real engines?
To prevent them from blowing up, I guess.
Exactly. To stop them from vibrating apart under maximum pressure. The subconscious mind is fiercely protective.
Protective against what, though? Success.
Yes, actually. At some point in your life, your mind decided that the pressure of massive success, or public visibility, or the pressure of a catastrophic failure was simply too dangerous to risk.
So it perceived a threat of explosion, whether emotional or social.
Right. So it installed the valve to keep you safe. The problem isn't that the valve exists. The problem is that it's severely miscalibrated for what you're actually capable of handling today as an adult.
Ah, so it's a defense mechanism that has outlived its usefulness.
Yeah, and it's basically morphed into a prison.
That reframes the whole concept of self-sabotage for me.
Yeah,
It's protecting us from a danger that isn't actually in the room anymore. We're guarding against a ghost.
that's a great way to put it.
And because we don't realize this valve is operating autonomously inside of us, we become completely blind to its effects, don't we?
We do. And when we can't see our own internal blockage, our ego has no choice but to project that restriction outward onto the physical world.
Because the ego is remarkably skilled at avoiding accountability.
Oh, absolutely. If your internal governor valve is restricting you to 20 miles per hour, your ego cannot accept that the limitation is self-inflicted.
That would require confronting the fear that installed the valve in the first place.
Exactly. So the ego looks out the windshield of the Ferrari and starts blaming the road conditions, the weather, or the other drivers.
The text is unapologetically blunt about this projection. It lists all these external factors we incorrectly blame for our limits.
Like the macroeconomic climate.
Yeah, or an unsupportive boss, or the algorithm on social media. The source even highlights a highly specific example about people blaming their geographic location.
Oh, the Belize example.
Right. It notes an entrepreneur who blamed their location in Belize for their total lack of business progress. The assumption is that moving across a border is going to magically change the internal plumbing.
It's the classic geographic cure, you know, the belief that a new city or a new job will suddenly fix an internal restriction.
But the source's assertion is absolute here. The blockage is entirely inside the subconscious pipe.
It uses the example of an artist or entrepreneur who holds a deep-seated belief that people simply won't buy my work.
And by holding that belief, what happens?
By holding that belief, you have effectively shut the governor valve before a single customer even walks in the door.
So you unconsciously sabotage your own marketing campaigns.
Yeah, you underprice your services, you hide the product on the back page of your website, you throttle the system so that your external reality perfectly matches your internal restriction.
You essentially manufacture the failure to prove your limiting belief correct, which I guess allows you to stay comfortably in your copper mine.
It's twisted, but it's safe.
And the source makes it clear that nobody is immune to this machinery, regardless of their tax bracket. There's a brilliantly stark comparison made in the text, the mansion versus shack dynamic.
That part is crucial. It points out that everyone is operating with the governor valve.
Even a person making $1 million a year might have a limiting belief actively preventing them from making $10 million.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fundamental truth. Wealth, status, and past achievements do not eliminate the governor valve.
You just change the setting of the ceiling.
Exactly. The man living in the shack has a governor valve set to a very low threshold, perhaps dictated by beliefs around mere survival.
While the man in the mansion has a governor valve set much higher, dictated by beliefs around maintaining affluence.
But the mechanism of restriction is identical. They are both experiencing a massive energy leak relative to their true potential. The ceiling is relative, but the visceral feeling of hitting it is universal.
So what does this all mean? I hear what the source is saying, and I get the psychological truth of projecting internal limits outward. But I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
It's very easy, and frankly, a staple of cheap self-help seminars, to claim that absolutely everything is entirely internal. But surely, external realities like a genuinely bad economy or a global supply chain crisis actually matter, right?
Of course they do.
So how are we supposed to distinguish between a genuine physical external roadblock and a subconscious blockage that's just disguised as one? Because from the driver's seat, They look identical.
The source anticipates this exact skepticism. It doesn't deny that harsh external realities exist. It doesn't claim the road is always perfectly paved.
Okay, so what's the catch?
The catch is that you cannot possibly know what is a genuine external roadblock until you crank the internal pressure up to maximum.
So if your valve is set to 20 miles per hour.
You have no empirical idea if the road ahead is actually blocked because you aren't moving fast enough to test the boundaries of reality.
You're stopping long before the actual barricade.
Exactly. The only way to discover the true, objective, external limits of the world is to completely remove your internal limits and see where you actually crash.
Wow, that is a rather unforgiving framework. It forces us to assume the blockage is internal until definitively proven otherwise by a collision with reality.
It's intense, but it's practical.
Which brings up the most urgent question for anyone listening.
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually remove this valve?
The million-dollar question.
Right. If we've identified that the true roadblock is inside the pipe, what is the specific wrench we use to crack it open? The deep dive now moves into the source's solution, which completely flips traditional self-help advice upside down.
Because the standard psychological advice for a limiting belief is usually highly therapeutic, right? It's deeply introspective.
Yeah, you're told to meditate on the blockage, journal about it.
Trace it back to a childhood trauma, or mentally reframe it with positive affirmations.
You're fundamentally told to wait and fix the belief before you attempt to build the thing you want to build. The assumption is that you need a clear pipe before you can turn on the water.
Get your mindset right first, then take action. We hear that everywhere.
It sounds incredibly logical.
Hmm.
But the source asks a pivotal question. Do you actually wait to fix the belief before you build?
And the text's answer is an emphatic, unapologetic no.
And no. Do not wait.
The strategy outlined here is to, quote, execute your way out.
Execute your way out. I love that phrasing.
It's a purely action-oriented, almost aggressive approach to personal development. The source demands that you build the product, write the book, or launch the business specifically to prove the belief wrong.
So you don't wait for the valve to peacefully and therapeutically open.
No, you force so much relentless pressure through the system until the valve physically snaps under the weight of your own execution.
Here's where it gets really interesting because the psychology behind this is so counterintuitive. It's like trying to get over a severe fear of heights.
Okay, how so?
Well, traditional advice might have you sitting in a room for months, looking at blueprints of a bridge, analyzing the structural integrity of the steel, and, discussing your feelings about altitude.
Which feels like you're doing the work.
Exactly. Looking at blueprints feels productive, but it's actually a highly sophisticated form of procrastination.
Oh, that's good.
The source material is saying to throw away the blueprints, get in your car, and just press the gas pedal until you are driving across the actual bridge. Stop analyzing the bridge and let the reality of the action overwrite the fear.
The mechanism of action is the only solvent for the fear.
Yes.
And the source distills this entire philosophy of execution into one incredibly profound tagline. It's arguably the most important sentence in the text. Completion is the foreclosure of doubt.
Completion is the foreclosure of doubt. Let's sit with the phrasing of that for a second. Foreclosure.
It brings up a very specific legal and financial metaphor.
Like a bank taking back a house. It means the doubt is permanently evicted. It no longer has a place to live in your mind.
Right. When you finally complete an invention, a complex project, or a piece of art, you have fundamentally altered the reality of the universe.
You've brought something from the unseen world of your imagination into the physical world.
You have created what the source calls a physical fact.
A physical fact.
Yes. A physical fact is something that your internal limiting belief simply cannot argue with. Your mind might scream, you aren't capable of doing this, you aren't smart enough, no one will care.
But if the finished, polished object is sitting right there on the table in front of you,
the belief is instantly rendered absurd. Completion is the highest form of audit.
it audits your doubts, pulls the receipts, and finds those doubts completely bankrupt.
I love that. And it forces the subconscious mind to update its software based on indisputable physical evidence.
It removes the wiggle room that our ego loves to live in. And the source provides a very specific final instruction on how to channel this pressure towards completion.
Right, the focus on the vessel.
Yes. It insists that we need to worry exclusively about the vessel, meaning the product, the creation, the actual thing we're building, and absolutely not worry about the buyers.
This distinction is what separates the amateurs from the masters in this framework. When you worry about the buyers or the market conditions or the critical reception of your work, you are leaking precious energy.
You're pouring your pressure into a vast ocean you cannot control.
And that immediately lowers the pressure in your own internal system.
So what's the alternative?
The source insists that your sole, singular responsibility is the vessel. If the vessel is completely finished, and if it's built with high pressure, meaning it was constructed with high integrity, immense focus, and unthrottled energy, the resonance of that creation will naturally find its rightful owner.
The market always responds to the pressure of a completed, uncompromising vessel.
This raises an important question, though, or rather, it forces a deeply uncomfortable self-reflection for all of us.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
If we objectively look at our own daily routines, how much time do we waste trying to think our way out of a limit?
Oh, a lot. Hours spent strategizing on whiteboards, planning the perfect launch.
Waiting for the perfect, fearless mindset when action is the only true solvent for doubt.
We sit around, fiercely clutching our copper permits, analyzing endlessly why they aren't turning into gold.
Instead of just taking the copper we have today and building something so undeniable that the universe is forced to upgrade our license.
It's the ultimate trap of the intellectualizing mind, isn't it? We convince ourselves that if we just understand the mechanics of the governor valve deeply enough, it will simply dissolve.
We think reading another book or listening to another deep dive will do the work for us.
But understanding a valve doesn't change the flow of water. Only turning the wrench does.
And in the context of this framework, turning the wrench is the act of relentless, unapologetic execution.
The transition from page 1's tuning fork to page 2's governor valve is ultimately a transition from theory to practice then.
Exactly. You can vibrate with all the intention in the world, but if your mechanics are throttling the output, you will remain frustrated.
Recognizing the mechanical nature of your own self-sabotage is the first step toward dismantling it, which brings this entire discussion perfectly full circle. Let's bring it all back to you, listening right now.
We have covered a vast amount of ground today.
We really have, transitioning from the raw energy of resonance to the very real, very mechanical restrictions we place on our own potential.
The undeniable takeaway from this text is that everyone, no matter how successful, confident, or put together they appear from the outside, is operating with a governor valve.
The man in the shack and the man in the mansion are battling the exact same internal machinery. The symptoms look different, but the disease is identical.
The only variable is whether you choose to remain willfully blind to it, projecting your frustrations onto the economy, an algorithm, or some remote location in Belize.
The invitation from the source material is to reclaim your agency. Recognize that the leak is internal.
And more importantly, recognize that you do not need to be fully healed, entirely confident, or perfectly aligned to start fixing the plumbing.
You just have to build the vessel. You have to stop waiting for your mindset to be perfect before you act. Let the sheer, undeniable pressure of completion destroy the doubt for you. Execute your way out of the trap.
Very well said.
So as we wrap up, I want to ask you to do a quick, honest audit of your own internal valves today. Look closely at the projects you've stalled on. Look at the difficult conversations you avoided, the creative goals you keep pushing to next quarter, the business ideas gathering dust in your notes app.
Where are you throttling your own flow with a copper permit mentality?
Where are you keeping your incredible high-performance machinery locked safely in airplane mode just to avoid the perceived danger of draining the battery?
It's a confronting audit, but an absolutely necessary one if you want to break through that invisible ceiling.
And I think that's the perfect place to leave it.
Wait, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you step back into your day and face those projects.
Oh, please do.
We have established that completion is the foreclosure of doubt, and that creating a physical fact is the only reliable way to snap a limiting belief. Right. So looking at your own life and your own quietest ambitions right now, what is one tangible physical thing you can finish today, no matter how small, no matter how seemingly insignificant, that would instantly prove your loudest internal critic completely wrong?